Most people who visit Horry County in South Carolina remember it for its coastline. The long stretches of white sand, the warm Atlantic, the kind of easygoing atmosphere that makes you want to stay a little longer than you planned. Myrtle Beach draws millions of visitors every year, and for the families who actually live there, it is simply home, a place where life moves at a gentle pace and where very little ever seems to go seriously wrong. Which is why what happened in the early hours of December 18th, 2013 hit this community so hard. Sometime before 4 a.m, a 20-year-old girl drove alone to a remote boat landing on the Waccamaw River, a quiet, isolated spot called Peachtree Landing, sitting at the bottom of a long stretch of road that almost nobody ever used. She parked her car by the water. She got out, and she was never seen again.
Heather Elvis's family and friends mounting a search across several counties again this morning. Teams of volunteers fanning across South Carolina in the bitter cold, searching by boat, by ATV, on foot and horseback.
No amount of attention.
Heather Elvis came into the world on June 30th, 1993, the first child of Terry and Debbie Elvis, a couple who had spent their whole lives in South Carolina. Growing up, Heather was inseparable from her parents and her younger sister Morgan. Terry described the kind of family they were very simply. Everybody does, for everyone else. That was just how they operated. And of all the relationships in that household, the bond between Heather and her father was perhaps the closest. The two of them were in contact every single day. A text message, a phone call. It didn't matter. That daily connection was just part of who they were to each other. After finishing at St. James High School in 2011, Heather was ready to start her own chapter. She moved out of the family home and into an apartment in Carolina Forest with her closest friend, Brianna Warrelman, and her parents gave her their full support. That was the kind of trust that existed in this family. By the time she turned 20, Heather was working shifts at the Tilted Kilt, a Scottish-themed restaurant on Broadway at the beach in Myrtle Beach. But the restaurant job was a means to an end. What Heather was really working toward was a career as a makeup artist. She was studying cosmetology on the side, building toward the life she had always pictured for herself. Her sister Morgan put it best when she said that Heather loved makeup, wanted to be in front of the camera, and simply had no concept of limits when it came to her ambitions. Everyone who spent time around Heather described her the same way. She was warm, she was fun, she was the kind of person who lifted the energy of any room she walked into. It was sometime in June 2013 when a man named Sidney Mora walked into the Tilted Kilt. He was 37 years old, the father of 3 children, and had been married to his wife Tammy for close to 2 decades. He ran his own small maintenance business, servicing commercial kitchen equipment at restaurants across the Myrtle Beach area. And that day, he had been called into the Tilted Kilt for a job. He and Heather got talking, and something between them clicked almost immediately. It wasn't long before Heather's feelings were all over her social media. She posted about having developed an attraction to older men. She put up messages directed at a particular man she described only as the guy who builds things at my job. She pointed Sidney out to her friends and co-workers every chance she got. Sidney responded to the attention. He started coming around the restaurant more than his work required. He would bring Heather coffee and bagels. He would sit in the parking lot at the back of the building and wait for her shift to end. By midsummer, the situation had clearly moved beyond a simple workplace flirtation. Heather posted 2 messages on Twitter within a minute of each other. "Baby did a bad thing," she wrote, And I'm in way too deep, but watch me get deeper. The people around Heather could see exactly what was happening, and not everyone was quiet about it. One colleague said that the girls at work made fun of Heather regularly because Sydney was a married man. She was called names. At one point, 2 of her co-workers went as far as calling the restaurant pretending to be Tammy just to cause trouble. But Heather wasn't pulling back. The relationship deepened through the summer. The two talked constantly by phone. They drove out to quiet, out-of-the-way places to spend time together. Sydney told Heather he was unhappy at home and that he was thinking about leaving his wife. He even floated the idea of bringing Heather on as a nanny for his children if he and Tammy relocated to Florida, a suggestion that confused even the friends Heather told about it, given the obvious nature of what was going on between them. Her friends tried to warn her. They told her Sydney wasn't going to leave, that he was using her, that this was going nowhere good. She heard them, but she stayed. By the middle of September, the strain of it all was beginning to show. On September 21st, Heather posted on Twitter, "Once upon a time, an angel and a devil fell in love. It did not end well." By late October, the relationship had come to an end. It should have been over. But for Heather, the worst of it was still to come. At some point, Tammy Mora found out about the affair, and the way she responded went far beyond a confrontation between a husband and wife. She began handcuffing Sydney to the bed at night so he could not leave the house while she was sleeping. She took control of his phone by changing the passcode to something only she knew. She pushed him into having her name tattooed permanently across his lower stomach. And Sydney went along with every single one of those demands. He was trying to hold his marriage together. He was trying to keep his family intact. And in that house, keeping things together meant doing whatever Tammy said. Tammy then arranged for Sydney to call Heather directly, with Tammy on the line, listening to every word. What Sydney said to Heather during that call was something Brianna, who was sitting right there with Heather at the time, never forgot. He told her, "You were nothing to me. You were just someone who spread your legs." Brianna said it was as though the two of them had set out to tear Heather apart completely. Not just the relationship, but her as a person. The phone call was not the end of it. What followed was a sustained and deliberate campaign against Heather that went on for weeks. Tammy rang the Tilted Kilt repeatedly, trying to have Heather removed from her job. She used Sydney's phone to send Heather explicit photographs and videos of the two of them together. Not to make a point, not out of grief, to cause as much pain and humiliation as possible. Heather eventually sent Sydney a message asking him to put a stop to it. She told him she had been sent home from work early because of the constant calls and had lost hours as a result. But Tammy didn't stop. In November, she sent Heather a series of direct messages that crossed into outright threatening territory. She told Heather to reveal her location, or she would find it herself, and warned her that the way she found out would not go well for Heather. She gave her one final chance to respond before meeting her in person. And then came a message that read, "Hey, sweetie, you ready to meet the missus?" Heather wrote back, "I think you're a little obsessed with me. I'm nobody you need to worry about anymore." She meant every word of it. The affair was finished. She had no interest in Sydney or in any further contact with either of them. She just wanted to be left alone. Around the same time, something else was weighing heavily on Heather. She and her co-workers at the Tilted Kilt had started to notice she was gaining a significant amount of weight in a short period of time, and Heather was terrified she might be pregnant by Sydney. Worried sick, she took a pregnancy test at the restaurant with her manager Jessica Cook present. The test came back as an error, inconclusive. Heather still didn't know for certain, and the not knowing made an already unbearable situation feel even more frightening. Towards the end of November, things finally started to look a little more hopeful for Heather. Sydney and Tammy had taken their 3 children on a 3-week road trip across California, and with the Moras gone, Heather felt like she could breathe again. The harassing messages had stopped. The phone calls had stopped. For the first time in months, she felt some peace. And there was genuinely good news in her life too. Heather had secured her dream job at a beauty salon as a makeup artist and was scheduled to start just before Christmas. She was absolutely elated. She couldn't stop talking about it with her friends and family. She had also decided it was time to move on romantically. She began talking to a man named Steve Schiraldi, someone she had only known for a short while, but who she had a really good feeling about. On the evening of December 17th, the two went on their first date, driving around Myrtle Beach to see the Christmas lights. At some point during the evening, they pulled into a parking lot, and Steve offered to teach Heather how to drive his manual car. Heather got behind the wheel, and right there from that parking lot, she sent her father a photo of herself smiling, with the caption, "Just learn to drive stick. I'm a pro." Terry has spoken about that photo many times. He said he had been trying to teach Heather to drive a manual for years and had never quite had the patience for it. And there she was, doing it on her own. He was so proud of her. Steve dropped Heather home at around 1:15 in the morning. They had agreed on a second date. What Heather had no way of knowing was that even before Steve had dropped her home that night, Sydney Mora had already walked into a Walmart. At 1:19 a.m., he made 2 purchases, a pregnancy test and a cigar. After Walmart, Sydney drove to a nearby gas station where he found a payphone. In 2013, payphones had almost completely disappeared. They were relics of another era. He didn't stumble across one by accident. He found one deliberately, because a call made from a payphone leaves no digital trace back to his own number. He picked up the receiver and called Heather from a number she had never seen before. She answered. Sydney told her he had left Tammy. He was sorry. He wanted to see her and be with her. At around 1:45 in the morning, Heather called Brianna, who was visiting family. She was crying hysterically. She told Brianna that Sydney had called her. Brianna's heart dropped. She asked why Heather had answered, and Heather said it was because she hadn't recognized the number. She told Brianna what Sydney had said, that he had left Tammy, that he was sorry, that he wanted to see her and be with her. Brianna was firm with her. "Don't do it," she said. "You're finally moving on with your life. You're happy again. You're yourself again. Sleep on this and we'll talk about it first thing in the morning." Heather agreed. But somewhere between that phone call and the early hours of that morning, Heather made a decision. She got in her car. At 2:30 a.m., Heather's phone called the payphone back. No answer. Her phone then moved toward a bar and grill in Carolina Forest near her apartment, where it stayed for around 15 minutes before moving to a location called Augusta Plantation Drive. What happened during those 15 minutes at Augusta Plantation Drive has never been fully explained. No one knows for certain whether it was a meeting point arranged in advance, or whether Heather sat in her car alone in the dark, having second thoughts. It remains the one moment in this entire timeline that has never been accounted for. At 3:25 a.m., a call was made to Sydney's phone. It was answered. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. At 3:37 a.m., Heather's phone arrived at Peachtree Landing. Between 3:37 and 3:41, her phone made 4 rapid calls to Sydney's number. Not one of them was answered. At 3:42 a.m., Heather's phone went completely dark. No more calls, no more data, no more signal of any kind. On December 19th, local police were dispatched to investigate a suspected abandoned vehicle. A green Dodge Intrepid parked haphazardly at Peachtree Landing. approximately 8 miles from Myrtle Beach on the Waccamaw River. The stretch of riverfront sat at the bottom of a long, lonely road that rarely saw any traffic. The car was locked. Officers ran the plates. The vehicle was registered to Terry Elvis, Heather's father. Terry was at home when officers knocked on his door. Confused and unable to reach his daughter on her phone, he accompanied them to the landing. When he saw Heather's car parked like that in that isolated spot, he was shocked, but not immediately alarmed. He unlocked the vehicle with a spare key. Officers searched inside. The car was empty of everything that mattered. No purse, no phone, no keys. Terry called her mobile. It went straight to voicemail. He contacted the Tilted Kilt. She wasn't scheduled to work until the following day. And that was the moment Terry knew. "This is totally out of the ordinary," he said. "Heather's never done anything like this before. Something's wrong." A missing persons case was opened immediately. Divers entered the Waccamaw River. Volunteers spread across several counties in the bitter cold, on foot, on horseback, by boat, and by ATV. The search went on for days, and then for weeks. They found nothing.
His family and friends mounting a search across several counties again this morning. Teams of volunteers fanning across South Carolina in the bitter cold, searching by boat, by ATV, on foot and horseback.
No amount of attention, no amount of law enforcement, no amount of work, effort that I do or anybody does is ever going to be enough until she's back home again.
The 20-year-old disappeared after a date in the early morning hours of December 18th.
There's no clear indication of why she left the apartment again after the date. There was no obvious signs of anything that occurred at the apartment.
Earlier that night, her date was teaching her how to drive a stick shift in this small parking lot. She called a friend afterwards to say how well the date went. Her father says she sent him a text. It was this picture of her driving the car that night.
For years, I tried to teach her how to drive one, and I just didn't have the patience to do it. And now she was doing it on her own. I'm very proud of it.
The next day, when she failed to show up for work, police found her abandoned car at a boat landing not far from her parents' home.
I think that everybody should take a moment to hold their family and tell them that they love them, because sometimes it's not enough to just assume that they know.
Just waiting for the right person to come forward and say, I saw something, or I heard something, or I know something, or I did something.
Detectives began tracing Heather's movements on the 17th and 18th of December. Steve Schiraldi was brought in for questioning and quickly cleared of any involvement. After being tipped off about the relationship between Sydney and Heather by Brianna and several employees at the Tilted Kilt, detectives brought Sydney in for questioning. He was evasive and standoffish from the very beginning. He denied being anywhere near Peachtree Landing. He denied having any contact with Heather whatsoever. He claimed that he and Tammy had been out driving together that night, having sexual relations in public, which the pair said they had recorded on their phones. Detectives weren't buying it. They pulled Heather's phone records. What they found was a series of calls placed from Heather's phone to a number she had never called before. 9 of them, made in rapid succession in the early hours of December 18th. The records led investigators to a payphone at a gas station in Myrtle Beach. The gas station had surveillance cameras. The footage showed someone using that payphone at the exact time the calls were made to Heather's phone. When confronted with the footage, Sydney admitted he had made the call. But he changed his story immediately, claiming he had called Heather to ask her to stop leaving notes on his vehicle and to please leave him alone.
When was the last time you talked to her before that 3 or 4 minutes?
Oh, shit, probably into October, beginning of November, right in there somewhere.
So you hadn't talked to her?
Oh, no. It was like well before, because we went on vacation. It was well before we went on vacation. And there was nothing. The last thing,
no contact or anything?
Yeah, there was the last thing that was sent or anything was she sent a period to me, and that was it.
And that was through text messages or phone calls?
And I didn't.
Did she normally text or call?
Usually it was text.
because you can delete them a little easier? Or
Well, no, that's just usually the way we talk. Because
when did your wife find out that was kind of going on?
about the end of October.
End of October. Okay. Now,
and she asked, "What do you want to do?" And I mean, at first, I didn't tell her what was going on.
Mm-hmm. Had she ever met her?
No.
Never seen her, never met her?
Nope. And then the following day, I told my wife what was going on, and my wife actually talked to her, and they had planned a meeting, and she didn't show up for the meeting.
Mm-hmm. How'd you start a relationship? Just
a couple of the girls had said, "Hey, Heather had a dream about you, like a nasty dream or something." And I'm like, "Okay, good." And then, I would go on about my business, and like 2 or 3 times that kind of happened, and then, we just kind of we would talk a little more every time in person, and then she started calling me. And I still don't know how she got my phone number, but she started calling me.
And this is around,
kind of led on,
do you think? Summer?
Mid-September or something, maybe.
Okay.
So
she started texting or calling in. You could have calling her back. I mean, she's a young, pretty girl.
Yeah. And she was interested in...
There was a phone call made to Heather that night from a payphone at the gas station on 10th Avenue.
Okay.
And we have video from that.
Okay.
Did you try calling her? Just a minute?
No.
A second? You sure?
Maybe.
Okay, how about we start again?
I did. I called her from the phone.
Let's start from the start again, because I
know.
I don't know you. You don't know me.
I know. In the whole story, everything's legit. Okay.
Let's go back to the part where it stopped being legit. And
okay.
From the
I did call her on the payphone.
Okay. And what did you say?
I asked her to please leave me alone because she had been leaving notes on her car when I was at work.
To call and say, "Leave me alone," to a woman who hasn't contacted you.
Need to start.
Shortly before making that call, Sydney had also been captured on surveillance cameras at a local Walmart purchasing a pregnancy test. When asked if it was for Heather, he denied it and said it was for his wife. Then came the truck footage. Surveillance cameras on the road leading to Peachtree Landing had captured a dark Ford F-150 heading toward the landing at 3:36 a.m. 1 minute before Heather's phone arrived there. The same truck was recorded leaving the area at 3:46. Expert witnesses confirmed it was a 100% match to Sydney's vehicle. Investigators obtained a search warrant for the Mora home. What they found there was deeply incriminating. The Moras had disposed of their original home surveillance system on December 20th, the day after Heather's car was discovered, and replaced it with a new one on December 21st. Whatever the old system had captured was gone, but the new system the Moras had just installed was already running, and it had captured both Sydney and Tammy thoroughly scrubbing the passenger side of their truck, and then burning every rag they had used to clean it.
Heather worked for us for over a year, and her name, we still keep her name on the schedule, because, she, until there's peace for everyone, her family, the community, our work family, we're keeping her name there.
Tammy was also brought in for questioning. She denied any involvement in Heather's disappearance and claimed the couple had an open marriage and that the affair with Heather meant nothing to her.
I had boyfriends. We had an open marriage. That's okay. I could care less if he had sex with 100 people. Okay. All right. I mean, that doesn't really, it doesn't bother me. So, I mean, this girl, I can tell you just by, as an outsider looking at the Twitter, which I didn't know existed until all this went down, she's not right. She's not normal. I was 20. I partied with bands constantly. I wasn't that kind of girl. And believe me, I had the friends to make me that kind of girl, and I didn't do it.
During the wider investigation into the Moras, something else came to light that painted a fuller picture of who these people really were. The Moras had been committing Medicaid fraud, defrauding the benefits system, while at the same time spending money on a brand new $50,000 Ford F-150 and expensive family vacations. These were not people pushed beyond their limits by one terrible moment. These were people who had already decided, long before Heather came into their lives, that the rules did not apply to them. In February 2014, after several months of investigation, Sydney and Tammy Mora were placed under arrest in connection with the disappearance of Heather Elvis. They were charged with kidnapping, and despite there being no body, with murder as well.
Morning, Sydney and Tammy Moore are behind bars in connection with the disappearance of 20-year-old Heather Elvis.
I wanted to feel happy about it, but there's no joy in it. Heather's still not home.
And for over 2 months, frustratingly slow progress until Friday's arrest, where police also raided the couple's home.
Anything that we release at this point, it could do a lot more harm than it could do good.
The breakthrough in the case coming from a discovery made by Elvis's father. He says he looked up her cell phone records.
There were a lot of calls to one particular number in the last hours before the phone stopped working.
That number, the parents telling ABC News, belonged to 38-year-old Sydney Moorer. Police say he and Elvis may have had a romantic relationship.
Despite being charged with both murder and kidnapping, Sydney and Tammy were able to post bail and were released from custody while they awaited trial. While out on bail, and in spite of a gag order that had been put in place by the court, both Sydney and Tammy wasted no time taking to social media to protest their innocence and insist they had been framed. Sydney went even further, giving a televised interview in which he said, "It's all a game, everything's a game, and it's not a game. It never has been a game from the very beginning. The meanness that I've seen come out of people. It amazes me how you can be so mean to someone you know nothing about something that we did not do."
Sydney Moore says he's frustrated he can't talk about it. He did talk about how it's hurting his family.
It's all a game. Everything's a game, and it's not a game. It never has been a game from the very beginning. The meanness that I've seen come out of people, it amazes me. How you can be so mean to someone you know nothing about a subject you know nothing about.
Sydney's repeated violations of the gag order eventually caught up with him, and he was jailed for 5 months for contempt of court. The murder charges were dropped in 2016. Without a body and without a crime scene, there was simply not enough physical evidence to take that charge forward. The kidnapping charges remained. In 2017, Sydney was convicted of obstruction of justice and sentenced to 10 years in prison. Sydney's first kidnapping trial, held in 2016, had ended in a hung jury. The jury in that trial never saw a critical piece of evidence: surveillance footage of the Moorers scrubbing their truck and burning the rags. That footage was not presented, and without it, the jury could not reach a verdict. Tammy stood trial in October 2018. The proceedings lasted 11 days. She chose to take the stand in her own defense, confident, at times combative, addressing the jury directly and referring to the prosecutor by her first name. At one point, she described herself as Heather's #1 advocate. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, guilty on both counts, kidnapping and conspiracy to kidnap, sentenced to 30 years in prison. Criminal prosecutor Chris Helms, reflecting on the case, told reporters, "Tammy Moorer was definitely the more domineering part of that couple. She told Sydney where to work, when to work, what to do. If I could classify Sydney as anything in that relationship, it would be utterly submissive." He also stated that Tammy had been livid at the betrayal and wasn't content to simply end things. She wanted to destroy Heather's life.
I feel like I'm begging for my life for something that I didn't do, that I didn't have anything to do with.
Moore was ultimately sentenced to 30 years in prison for each charge. 2 sentences she'll serve at the same time.
Sydney's retrial followed in September 2019. This time, the truck cleaning footage was shown to the jury in full. They returned their verdict in under 2 hours. Guilty. 30 years. To be served alongside the 10 years he was already serving for obstruction.
I give them closure, I would. I mean, anything I tell them would be a lie. There's nothing I can tell them to give them any closure. I understand, I have children, I get it. There's just nothing I can give them for closure.
Right. Well, thank you, sir.
I know they suffered probably way more than I have, yes, and I feel bad for them, I really do. nothing I can give them. I'm sorry that I can't.
Both Sydney and Tammy appealed their convictions. Both appeals were denied. They are both serving their sentences today, and through every arrest, every hearing, every trial, every appeal, and every year that has passed since December 2013, neither Sydney nor Tammy Mora has ever said a single word about what happened to Heather, or where she is. As of today, Heather's body has never been found.
And I said, exactly. Because this is over. But we still haven't found Heather. And it's like I was telling the judge, there has to be something more. There has to be something more that we can hold over their head to make them talk. There's got to be some kind of an incentive. It was so hard to walk out of the courtroom knowing that that might be the last time we get to do anything in that way.
In an effort to ensure that people will always remember her, the Elvis family spends every June 30th, Heather's birthday, putting up missing persons flyers around town. They remain hopeful that at some point someone will come forward and that the answers about where Heather is will finally come to light. Debbie Elvis said, "As a mother, that child that was created in you, that you carried in your arms and put band-aids on, you just ache to hold your child again. And you think about what you could have done different, what you could have said that would have changed anything. For our family, and any other family that has a missing member, this is horrible, not knowing, not being able to take care of your child in any capacity whatsoever." Terry Elvis said, "I hold out hope that I'll turn around one day at the front door and she'll walk in. Do I really think that'll happen? Deep down, no, I don't. But I'll never give up. 2 people are in prison for what they did to Heather Elvis. It took years of work, multiple trials, and a family that refused to give up. That matters. But the law has its limits. It can convict. It cannot force a confession. It cannot make 2 people who know exactly what happened to that young woman and exactly where she is say a single word about it. The Elvis family has verdicts. They have sentences. They have the names of the people who took their daughter. What they don't have is Heather. And until the day that someone finally decides to speak, that is exactly where this story remains. Thank you for watching. Make sure you subscribe and turn on your notification bell so you won't miss our next case.